And this webinar as well will be put up there shortly after, in a couple days or so. So a little bit about the Prometheus Radio Project. We're a not-for-profit based in Philadelphia, and we've been around for about 15 years doing work to build participatory radio as a voice for expression and a tool for social justice organizing. We exist to counter corporate consolidation and control of the media. Over time, the media has become less and less accessible to communities as corporations have acquired a bigger share of the media landscape. It is not in the interest of this small handful of corporations to effectively represent, celebrate, and affirm the varied communities that we are all a part of. We need to own our own media outlets to tell stories of our histories, to make our own news that combats stereotypes and speaks truth to power, and to create positive changes in our communities. For the past 13 years, Prometheus has helped hundreds of communities start their own radio stations, and today there are over 800 low-power FM stations on the air. This fall, many new channels are becoming available across the nation, and this is an opportunity for communities to own their own media infrastructure through starting low-power community radio stations. By community radio here at Prometheus, we mean transformative for both listeners and media makers, participatory as in democratically organized with community involvement in the production of content, and affordable and accessible stations with multimedia capabilities that are locally rooted. At Prometheus, we're going to just look at the goals for this webinar. So that, again, this is the everything you ever wanted to know about low-power FM. And the goals today are to review basics about low-power community radio, to review the most important aspects of the FCC application process, and also have a chance to ask our applicant support team questions about your application and about your future stations. At Prometheus, we're on the ground in communities of the country working with grassroots groups like the ones many of night or joining us this afternoon rather are a part of. And we want to use the media to create a more democratic society. These are part of our strategy to promote participatory radio as a part of building that society. Please consider supporting Prometheus, where your financial support today means a better media future. And you can visit our website to support our work, prometheusradio.org/donate. So we have a few presenters today. First, I'm going to ask Candace to present on the Low Power FM Guide that she worked on with members of the Prometheus Radio Project. Candace Clement specializes in campaigns that examine the media's role in. She also manages Free Press's initiatives on community media and advises on their efforts to expand support with media. Before joining Free Press, Candace worked with community radio station Valley Free Radio. I want to welcome Candace to our call today, and I'm just going to, Candace, I'll just upload your presentation here. Just give me a minute.
Great, thanks. Awesome. Okay, so hi everybody. I'm really excited to be here and to see you folks online. It's really exciting to see how many people are dialing in and listening from all across the country, and I'm hoping we can have a really exciting discussion here. Just to give you guys a little bit of information about Free Press in case you aren't familiar with us, we are a national nonprofit organization, and we work on media-related policy issues, and we are building a movement for better media focusing on policy changes that can happen inside of. So we focus mostly on the federal level, but we do see a lot of these issues starting to pop up statewide as well. And we work to fight media consolidation. We work on ensuring that everybody can get universal access to the internet, to increase support for public media, and at Free Press we define public media as all media that is not corporate controlled, so that includes things like community radio, public access television, etc. So Prometheus has asked me to come on and talk a little bit about this guidebook that we put together, which was really something that came out of a couple months of discussion with the Prometheus Radio Project about all of the many different resources that existed at various locations, various websites, kind of scattered all over the place, and we were hoping to consolidate them into one single document so that people who were interested refer to this. So I'm going to walk through this a little bit and not spend a ton of time on it just because, you know, the document's online and everybody can take a look at it, and I'm sure we want to have a lot of time for Q&A as well. But there are a couple things that I wanted to say about it before we jump in. And I think, we've been talking with groups across the country. You're all examples of this as well. This is a really singular opportunity, this moment, to apply for LPFM stations in October. So, as I've been talking to organizations, I feel like the biggest things to keep in mind right now is, if you're interested and you qualify and you can do this, this is an opportunity to jump on. It's not something that's going to necessarily come up again anytime soon. And please keep in mind that, if you know anyone in another community who you think might qualify as well, please spread the word. We really think that folks can do this. I know it seems like it's coming up really quick, but if you have a vision and you can dedicate some time over the coming weeks, this is totally doable. I'll take, let me see, how do I move through the guidebook? Oh, okay, I see it's slide by slide. This is very much written in sort of a chronological order from the perspective of starting a station with sort of the seedling of an idea. So it's worth knowing that, whatever information you're looking for in the document could kind of be anywhere inside of it. So just keep that in mind as we are looking through it. I don't know if folks can read it. It does seem like the text is a little bit small, but I will do my best to walk through this with people. And you can also find this. Oh, I see Prometheus put the link up on the side there as well, so that's great. So if you want to take a look at that link and follow along as well, please feel free to do so. So sort of, a starting point to consider here is finding out whether or not you qualify. So you would definitely want to look and see if a radio frequency is available in your area. There are lots of resources available to do something like that that are free, which is really exciting. I think most of the folks on this call are probably aware of what the basic requirements are if you're going to apply for a license, but you've got to be a state-recognized nonprofit organization. Doesn't mean that you have to be a 501c3. But you do need to be a nonprofit recognized by the state. You're going to want to be local, and you are going to want to have a station that is non-commercial and educational in its mission. And educational can be interpreted in a wide array of manners, but that's the basic sort of requirement. And then the document goes into a little bit of detail about some legal requirements for your board of directors, which is another thing to keep in mind as you're getting things together. Moving on to the second page here, we talk about thinking about the costs. This is something that's definitely come up in conversations recently, as a lot of groups, I think, have been hearing about this opportunity for a long time and have kind of been on the fence about whether or not to do it, and now the deadline is so soon, and what do we do? I think the biggest thing to keep in mind here is, yes, it will definitely take a financial investment to build a station. We've sort of estimated startup costs here at around $10,000, but that's to build the entire station. What you're going to need for October is really just, an engineering study. And, we mentioned this in the document as well. If you're in a community where you're not you don't have a sort of tricky frequency that you're trying to get your hands on, and there's a lot of buffer zones around it, you might be able to do the application entirely by yourself with the resources that Prometheus has online and the various tools that are out there. So, we estimate that engineering fees can range anywhere from, I think we said, $300 to $3,000. So that's really what folks are looking at for startup costs right now. The third point that we make here, is really thinking about what kind of station your community actually needs. We at Free Press, and I think Prometheus shares this opinion as well, really believe that a community radio station is just that. It's reflective of the community. So it's very important to understand your community, to kind of know what the local landscape looks like, what is offered, what isn't, what voices are already on the air, who do you need to get involved so that this station really reflects all of the different groups and all the different perspectives in your town or in your city. And there are lots of great examples of different radio stations on Prometheus's website as well. And then sort of the fourth thing that we have for kind of getting started is you don't want to have a vision and a mission for your statement or for your station. You're going to need something that will draw people in and get them excited so that you can get people from the community involved. Moving right along. The second section of this guidebook really talks a little bit more about fundraising, and I think that's definitely an important thing to keep in mind. But again, as we've said earlier, you might need to raise $10,000 to build your LPFM station, but that's not necessarily the cost that you're going to have to face over the coming weeks as you're getting ready to actually apply. A good point to start with any fundraiser is to make sure you know exactly what your goals are. What are you raising money for? Really get a sense of how much money you want to raise, and make sure that all of that is sort of well defined so that you can communicate that to people as you're getting started. The second thing we say here is that you should really start early. There's no better time to start fundraising than right now. So start raising money as soon as you can. Open up a bank account. These are really basic things that will help you pull money together and give you lots of options for getting funding for the station. Moving along to the next page, we say that another great thing to do is to ask often. So, make sure that you're always asking for money. These are very basic things about fundraising, and I'm sure plenty of the folks on this call have a lot of great tips and ideas for ways to fundraise. But, it's always ask in person. Think about having in-person events. Those can also serve as great ways to let people in the community know about the station and sort of get them more involved. Very good to develop an email list. Can't say enough about how functional that is, both for fundraising and also just for getting people engaged with the station. Make sure to keep in touch with people on a regular basis. Let them know how things are going, and definitely don't get discouraged. That's sort of fundraising 101. It can be tough to ask, but nobody gives without being asked first. So that's a great thing to keep in mind. And we also say, think small. It's a lot easier for people to give $5, than it is to get a bunch to give you $100. So focus on spreading the word and getting as many people giving small amounts of money to the station, and I think that helps get them sort of more invested over time. All right, the final point here that we talk about being flexible. I think these are just some basic things about fundraising, and this is kind of a similar thing that we think about when we talk about people maybe signing petitions or something like that too. If it's too complicated to donate, people aren't going to do it. So make sure that you make it as easy as possible for them to do that, and take credit cards, cash, checks, other forms of money. There's all kinds of services out there that make this a lot easier than it has been in the past. All right, moving right along. Oops, did I just skip a page? Okay. Oh, being creative. Sorry, fundraising keeps going. Yes, be creative. Have different kinds of events. That's a great way, again, to get people giving money to your cause, but also getting them involved with the station itself. And be your own donor. That's a great way to set an example for other people around you. Being sure to give your own money to the cause as well. All right, moving right along, application process. I think this is definitely something that we'll talk about in a bit more detail when Prometheus talks as well. But the application window is opening up soon. We're just a couple weeks away at this point. So you definitely want to get yourself familiar with the application, which I believe is on the FCC website now, so that you can sort of take a look and get a sense of the kind of information that you're going to have available. So get really familiar with the project or the process. I think everybody is probably already getting information from Prometheus, but if you haven't signed up for their mailing list, you should definitely do that because they send out useful tips all of the time. There's also a great checklist on their website about the various requirements for the application that you'll need to have ready. So definitely get your mind wrapped around that. Look early, look often, so that you have a sense of everything that you're going to need to have ready when it comes time to actually filling out the application form. The next part that we have here talks a little bit about enlisting an engineer. And again, I love this analogy that applying for an LPFM license is a little bit like doing your taxes. So if your situation is pretty straightforward, you will probably be able to handle things on your own, and that's great. If it's complicated, you're probably going to need a professional to help you out. So again, if you're living in a rural area where there's definitely going to be a frequency available and it's not too close to any stations around it, you might be able to do the application on your own. If you're in a major city or something like that, and you are in a crowded market, you're probably going to need an engineer to help you out just to make sure that your application has everything in correctly and that you're looking at the right frequency and sort of the engineering studies are all done and complete. So again, definitely look at the RadioSpark website. Use the R-Free software if you haven't already. I'm sure a lot of folks on this call have already done these things, and we'll be able to talk about that in a little bit more detail when Prometheus talks later. This third point, apply for your LPFM construction permit. So that's basically actually what you're applying for in October. The application is to get a construction permit. If you were to be awarded a construction permit, you, I believe, would have 18 months, correct me if I'm wrong here, to build your station after you're awarded a construction permit, and that's when you would actually get an LPFM license. So again, in October, what you're applying for is the construction permit. Again, get a sense of everything that's going to be on the application and have a draft ready so that it's ready to submit and you don't run into any questions at the last minute or anything like that. This next point, be prepared to negotiate with competitors. So once the applications are all in, the FCC is going to divide the applicant pool up into two different categories. Singletons, which are applicants who don't have any competitors for the same frequency, and MX stations, which are groups that are competing for the same station. So obviously the singletons have a little bit easier time. MX groups, the FCC needs some sort of process to decide which of these organizations is actually going to get the license. Unfortunately, the FCC isn't super concerned with the content necessarily of what your station is going to do. So if I wanted to have a station where all I did was celebrate how amazing the band, I don't know, Nickelback was, and I said my purpose was to educate the masses about the great music of Nickelback, and you wanted to apply with a really great station that was going to provide news and information, the FCC doesn't make their decision based on the content of what's going on there. They do, however, have a point system that they use. And the Prometheus radio project has a great thing on their website that sort of dives into a little bit more about how the point system works, what you get points for. But basically, if you are a locally oriented station, meaning all of your board members are living within a certain geographic radius of your transmitter, then you'll get a certain number of points. If you're pledging to do local programming, then you'll get a point. So they have a sort of process laid out that will allow them to calculate which group is more likely to receive or which group they will give the construction permit to. And again, we can talk a little bit more about that during the Q&A. All right, moving right along to the next page. I believe this is page 7. So the next thing on here is building your organization. And again, it's going to take the FCC months, potentially years, to actually start awarding licenses and handing out construction permits. That said, there's a lot of work that you can do in the meantime. If you are a brand new organization that's just getting started up and sort of working with another 501c3 to chaperone you through the process, there's a lot of just basic organizational building work that you have to do. If you are an established organization and you're applying, a radio station is a whole new project, and a community radio station is a whole new project, and it's going to involve a whole different group of stakeholders, and there's a lot of things to think about as far as how your organization is going to function, how it's going to be governed, all of that kind of stuff. And there's plenty of great resources out there to help with that, but that's certainly something that you will want to be thinking about in the time after you submit your application. All right. We talk a little bit more here about what various startup expenses might be. Again, you're not necessarily going to want to run out and buy a bunch of equipment until you know that you've actually been awarded a construction permit. So that is definitely something to keep in mind, but there's some good advice in here about how you can do it on the cheap side and save a little bit of money. Let's move to the next page. Another thing to think about when it comes to expenses are recurring expenses. And these are things that, no matter how bare bones your station is going to be, you're definitely going to have, at least you assumed you're going to have rent and utilities. You might own your own building, which is amazing if you do. But that's something to think about is rent and definitely utilities. You're going to have to think about licensing content. So, if you're going to play any sort of music, you have to pay licensing fees to performance rights organizations like ASCAP and BMI and CSAC. And there's a lot of information online about what all that means and how that translates and what those costs are. You might have paid staff, you might not. The station that I am was involved in years ago was an all volunteer-run station and survived many years that way. And I think just recently got to the point where they brought on somebody part-time just to help out and have somebody in the thing. So another thing to think about. And then just, equipment, I think that says equipment, equipment upkeep and emergencies. Something might break, so, always good to have a little money in the bank in case something like that occurs. All right, so let's say you actually get a construction permit. That's super exciting. We talk a little bit here about selecting the right space. I do think that in order for you to apply, you have to already know where your space is going to be. So, this is something you will have probably already thought of before you filled out the application in the first place. But, a couple things to keep in mind. You really could run a station out of a tiny room. It doesn't have to take up a lot of space. Obviously, the more space you have, the many different things that you can do with it, and the many different ways space can be used is great. But, you can also do it in a very small space, and small doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad thing. The station that I was involved in at Valley Free Radio does not have a large space at all, and it's worked really well through the years. We talk a little bit more about some design things that you're going to want to think about as you're putting your studio together. Thinking about sound, thinking about accessibility. You can also make whatever you have work, and definitely be creative as you're doing that. All right. We talk a little bit here again about working with engineers, and I think somebody might have asked a question about how to find engineers. I'm kind of seeing the chat go by on the side there, so perhaps some of the folks at Prometheus can talk about a good way to connect with engineers as well. All right, we're on page 10 here. So asking for help. Prometheus is definitely here and has tons of resources on the website. Just dig in. There's a lot to find on there. Common Frequency is another organization that has a lot of great resources, and they've been really part of the whole movement and push to get the LPFM legislation passed, and then they pay a lot of attention to things happening at the FCC as well. So they're a great group to turn to. The National Federation of Community Broadcasters, they have some information on their website as well. You might need to be a member, but they do have a lot of great resources. Free Radio Berkeley is another group. They've got equipment for sale and some technical information. So be sure to, Google is your friend, and we're also here to help answer questions as well. The last part here, we talk a little bit about developing programming, and I think there's some good tips in here about making sure that your programming is consistent, and that you're thinking about community needs as you're putting together what kind of programming is going to happen on your station. I'm not going to talk a ton about this because I don't think this is really the focus of this particular conversation, but these last few pages talk a lot about different things to think about as you're figuring out what sort of programming you want to have on your station. And I'm going to conclude it there. I think that is a good place to stop. So that was a lot of talking. Thank you all for listening. I'll turn it back over to Prometheus.
Thanks, Candace. That was great. That was a great overview of the guide, and I hope that helps some folks out with some of the basic questions, but also I had put the link up there for the guide, and you can find that both from the Free Press and the Prometheus website. I think what we're going to do is, so now's the time for all of your questions, and I think while I'm taking a look at what comes up in the chat box, I am going to pass it over to our applicant support team some members, not our entire team is here, but Ian Smith is here, who's the program director, and Martina, who is our technical director here at Prometheus. And I think the first question I saw come up in the chat box was about how to find an engineer. And so maybe I know, Anna, put some information in the chat box about that, but Anna, would you like to speak just a little bit about how to do that for some folks who might not be on the computer as well?
Sure. Hello, everybody. So I was just entering that in the chat. So you can go to our website and radiospark.org, and you click on the menu on resources, and then you can click on the engineering support. It's a filter, and then that's just going to filter the results that you're going to have. Then you're going to see a lot of profiles of different engineers that post their services there. Then you can click in each profile, and you're going to see the qualifications and services that they offer. I would recommend to call us if you're trying to find an engineer, because then we can offer more like a specific support, you know, and kind of like guide you to know what are the questions that you want to ask these folks, and to make sure that the engineer that you're contacting is actually a person that knows how to perform the specific waivers, if you are going to need any waiver, or if they will be, you know, able to help you. And it's a qualified engineer. They actually knows how to put on these applications, because it's a different broadcast engineer, and we just want to make sure that you are actually working with the folks. They actually know how to do this, and they have the expertise.
Great, thanks, Anna. Another question that came up that people were curious about, and I've seen this question before in some of our other webinars, is about changing the license holder. So if you start with one organization, is there a chance to change, I guess, the owner of the license at one point? And maybe if we could just have a quick answer on that too, because I know there's a couple folks out there who are curious about that.
Yeah, I also post a link that will take you into the rules and that specific section of assignment and transfer of a LPFM license. And for those guys that are interested in looking at that, you can just click into that link, and it's going to explain, you know, what are the requirements for that. I believe there is a period that you have to, yeah, it's 3 years holding period. The license cannot be transferred or signed for 3 years from the date of issue, and the license must operate the station during the 3-year holding period. So, yeah, that's the answer. And if people just want to go back to the chat, you're going to find the link there.
Yeah, I'll just add a few other things. So, yeah, like Anna said, you can transfer the license after 3 years. This is 3 years after your station goes on air, and this is very common for a number of reasons. One of the reasons is maybe your organization isn't a nonprofit now, so you're not eligible, so you're working with a parent organization to apply, and that eventually you're going to incorporate, and you're going to want the license transferred to you after 3 years. So in that case, if you're looking for a parent organization to partner with to apply, you're going to want an organization, you know, that you trust and you have a good relationship with, because they're going to own the license up until that point when it's transferred to you. And the second reason, which is also very common, is that an organization starts a radio station, and you know the radio station sort of outgrows the original nonprofit organization, and it incorporates itself and has the license transferred to them, because it sort of grew out of it just outgrew its original organization. So it's a common thing, but you're looking at a 3-year time period after you get on air until you can actually do that.
Great, thanks for that, folks. Another question I think we'll look at, I think a lot of the questions that people have, is really thinking about what are the most important pieces for your application right now. And so I was wondering if the two of you could break that down for people. What are, you know, the top things that people need to be focused on, and where can they find information about each of those pieces?
That's a good question. So nobody is going to apply for a radio station for you. You really have to start doing this now if you're planning on applying. So there are 4 things that you need to do. First, if you haven't already, you have to create an account on CDBS, which is the application software on the FCC's website to apply. You can find that by going to prometheusradio.org/CDBS, and that will bring you directly to that page. And if you need support in making an account on CDBS, you can go to prometheusradio.org/CDBS how-to, and that gives you a tutorial of how to create an account on the FCC's application software. So that's where you're going to be filling out your application. It's similar to doing your taxes in terms of the bureaucracy of it. The second thing is you want to start now collecting all of your nonprofit papers. You're going to have to prove you're a nonprofit, and you're going to do that from any paperwork you have from your state. So like Candace said, you don't have to be a 501(c)(3), so any of your federal tax exempt status or any papers like that you don't need for the application, and you don't need to be eligible. So you want to get all your paperwork together to apply, include the name of your board of directors and all of that. The third thing is you want to get a relationship with an engineer, and soon, because a lot of these engineers who are doing this work, there's not many of them out there who can do these specific applications, and their time is filling up. So you want to make sure you get an agreement from one of them to work with you on the technical portion of your application before they sort of book all their slots. And the fourth thing I'll let Anna talk about, which is starting to look for a transmitter location. That will really speed up the process. If you can bring to an engineer the specific place where you want to put a transmitter, that will increase the speed in which you can complete your application. And so maybe Anna can give you a few words on how best to start that process.
Yes. So as Ian was just mentioning, there's kind of like two sections, that we are going to be filling out in the application. One is like the part is like the legal paperwork that Ian just described, and the second part is sometimes it will take a little bit more of time because there's a lot of back and forth communication sometimes between owners of towers or buildings and the applicant. So it's very important that if you guys start looking for this place right now, because it's going to take some time and things might change. So look for a place that it has an altitude in your town. You want to look for taller structures, whether they are existing buildings or existing towers, or sometimes water towers or some kind of like structures. Sometimes people even look for flagpoles, that have a specific height that it might you to use as a structure to be placed in your antenna there. So it's very important that you find these structures that have an ideal height in your town. And remember sometimes that terrain, it can be different. So it's possible that you're going to have if you're on a flat terrain, you're probably going to be finding probably a place that has an altitude, and then you're going to have probably a good coverage. But if you have an uneven terrain where you have parts of the town there in a valley, and then you have like mesas or like some other kind of like high places in your town, you probably just wanted to keep that in consideration, because if you're in a valley, probably you're not going to be able to be covering other areas there. They have a little bit more of a high altitude. And I'm saying this because it's important to know that the antennas, the way they're going to be sending these waves is line of sight. So just, make sure that you're trying to find these places that have a good altitude. And then when you're looking for these places, for these buildings or existing structures, remember that it's important to have a good relationship with the owner and to start working on that relationship, because if you find a building and you really like the altitude and you find out that you will have a really good coverage there, but then the owner doesn't really give you a permit to be building your antenna there, later on you're just not going to be able to use that location on your application. So make sure that when you're looking for these tower sites, for these transmitter sites, that you can get a permit on grading, what we call reasonable assurance. And we have a template in our website that I can post the link in a second, and you can use this document as a template to build the kind of like agreement that you're gonna need from the owner. This document doesn't need to be attached to the application, but it's very important that you have this for your own safety, to know that you're going to be able to use that location to later on to your antenna in this location. And then once when you're going to be talking with these owners, they probably are going to be asking you what kind of a structure or device you're going to be putting in their building. So we have also a document in our website that will help you to explain to the owners what are the kind of equipment that you're going to be placing in their building, what kind of antenna, the weight, and information that's a little bit more technical. So I can put the links in a second. So these are kind of like the first thing that you want to be doing is, after you make sure there is an available frequency in your town, make sure that you find a good transmitter site. Make sure that you are actually going to be able to put your antenna in this building. And yeah, those are the two. And the other thing, the place that you find out there is a good coverage in your town, make sure that you find an engineer. If you're going to be filling your application by yourself and you find that the frequency is going to be causing any kind of interference, and with this is if the frequency is it's marked as a yellow frequency, you're going to need to work with an engineer. So make sure that you find an engineer that will be able to perform this waiver. And if you need any help, just please give us a call. You can send me an email also at technical@prometheusradio.org, and I can help you to find out more information. And we'll post the links in a second.
So Candace asks, do you need to have your transmitter and studio site locked down for the application? Yes, and kind of. So for the transmitter location, like Anna said, you actually have to put down the exact latitude and longitude of where that's going to go, and then you need to have on record, not for your application, but we can't emphasize enough that you have to have it on record, a letter from the property owners where that transmitter site is that proves you to use that space if you're awarded a license. Those applications have been dismissed in the past because they didn't have that letter of agreement from the property owners. And again, you just put that on your own files. You're not going to submit it for your application. For the studio location, that's a bonus point you get on your application if you pledge to maintain a publicly accessible studio. So if you're pledging that point, you're saying that you promise to have a studio that's publicly available 20 hours a week and has a person at it, a real human being where people can go and talk 20 hours a week. So if you're making that pledge for that bonus point, you put an address and a phone number of a potential studio site that's publicly accessible. You don't actually have to use this space. You could move it to another space. You don't have to have this being your studio, but you want to put something that could be used as a studio if it came to that.
Just one more last thing is that the studio doesn't need to be the same location where you have your transmitter site. There's ways in how you can be sending your signal from the studio to your transmitter site, but one thing that you definitely want to make sure is that the transmitter site, it is around the area that you want to be serving, because from the place where you put your transmitter and your antenna is the place that the waves, the FM waves are going to be sending around your community. So just keep that in mind. And if you need more information also on how to send signals from studio to transmitters, again, I will put some links, and again, just contact me at technical@prometheusradio.org.
So someone also asked, can you share your Form 318 with other people? You can, if you want. Risks involved, some people, like we mentioned before, in urban areas it can be competitive. So people will know if you share Form 318 with them, what channel you're applying for. So you could be outing yourself in terms of competition. But if it's with allied groups and you're trying to work with folks to apply and they need some support in that, there's no restrictions to sharing that form.
One question that's come up and I think comes up a lot is having an idea, based on your folks' experience working with other stations or to-be stations, is how long you think it's likely the FCC will take to grant construction permits. And then maybe also a follow-up to that I think folks often have is discussing situations where folks have to share a license.
Okay, so we don't know, for the first question, we don't know for certain. So what the timeline looks like is after the application window closes in October 31st, then your opportunity to apply is over at that point. So that's why it's important to get your application submitted by the 31st at the latest. After that, Candace mentioned this, they put applicants into two pools, one for people who have applied to a channel that nobody else applied for, and they're calling those singletons, meaning you're the only applicant on a channel, and the other pool of people who are people who have applied for the same channel in the same area where the FCC can't grant licenses to all of them. So for that first pool, the pool of singletons who have applied for a channel that nobody else has applied for, you are very, very lucky. And this is almost certain not to happen in large urban areas where there are few channels available, but possible in rural areas and places where there's many channels available. In that case, you could be granted your permit, your license to start building your station very soon. This first one's possibly as early as late winter, early spring of 2014. For that second pool of competition, the range could be very large in terms of when your licenses are granted. Some of them, if the competition is resolved quickly, it could be, also in late spring, summer of 2014. And in other cases, it could drag out for months or years. There are stations who applied in 2000, 2001 who weren't licensed until 5, 6, 7 years later in extreme cases. And I'll briefly talk about competition. So basically, if you apply for the same channel as another group, the FCC encourages you to collaborate and share the license with what they call a timeshare agreement. So it's basically you divide up the station based on time. So if there's two groups that apply, one group would say, I'll run the station from Monday to Wednesday, and you'll run it from Thursday to Sunday. And you would have two separate call letters, two separate paperwork for the station. You actually have two different licenses on the same channel. And if you were able to come with agreement with everybody else who applied for your channel, you could resolve the competition quickly. If that doesn't work, the FCC then goes to the point system, and it goes to groups who have the most points. And if there's groups who are tied for points, then it goes back to who can make a deal to share the station with another group.
There was one question about the tribal point, so I just answered that in the chat. To earn this point, you must be a federally recognized tribe or an entity that is 51% or more controlled by a tribe, and the proposed site for your station's transmitting antenna must be located on your tribal land.
Thanks. One thing that I'll put here, since we're coming to the end of the call, is maybe you folks can talk. I know that there's through the entire time we've been talking a lot about the support Prometheus can provide, but maybe if you guys want to also just relist some of the key places and people that applicants can be in touch with. So what support can Prometheus provide to people?
Okay, good question. So like I mentioned before, nobody's going to fill out your application for you unless if you're hiring a lawyer or an engineer to do so. So you really have to play the lead on that, and Prometheus's role is really going to provide support for that. So if you have questions when you're filling out your application, you should always feel free to call us, and we can talk through specific issues on your application. If you need more information on something, we have tons of resources. Or if you need to get connected to a lawyer and engineer and you're having trouble finding one, call us up and we can connect you with a lawyer and engineer who does specific support around low power FM applications. The most important thing, you want to make sure if you haven't already filled out an applicant group profile, that will put you in our system, and then we know you exist. So that's prometheusradio.org/applicant support, and we're enter that into the chat. So make sure you do that if you haven't done so already. If we are contacted with other groups in your area, we can play a networking role to connect you with other applicant groups in your area so you can start talking to them as soon as possible. And if we're ever doing trainings in your area, we can let you know. And you'll also be put on our Bring the Fire email list, which is an email list for applicant groups that has our most up-to-date information about the application process. So the most important thing is you're going to get as much support as you sort of ask for. So stay in touch, send us email, call us if you're having problems with your application, and we can help you as best as we can.
I just post also a couple links where people will find more information also. We have a a link in our website, prometheusradio.org /resources -tools, and you can find a lot of information there. You can find a technical guide to understand how to fill out technical box in your application, as well as the application guide that will help you how to fill out your application step by step. Also in the legal aspects, and documents that will help you to put together your educational program exhibit, and how to create a CDBS account. We have a lot of resources there, so if folks have a lot of actually questions that folks were asking, you will find those answers in those resources there. So I chat the link, so yeah, if you guys have questions, go there.
Yeah, it looks like, actually, I think are there any more questions out there that folks have been holding on to? We'll take one more question if there is one. And if not, I'll just take a minute anyway to say thank you so much to Candace for doing that great presentation on the Low Power FM guide. That was excellent. And I would encourage people to take a look at that. And then, and also, of course, thanks to our two applicant support team members here, and Ian, who've done a great job answering all these questions. It's been great. Again, you see that there's the support at prometheusradio.org. It's up on the slide. You can get in touch with people there. Like Ian said, make sure to fill out an applicant support profile if you haven't already done so in order to be in touch with and get access to more resources here at Prometheus. And Anna, of course, also mentioned her email, technical@prometheusradio.org, and that's to ask further questions about the technical aspects of your application. Candace just put her contact info up there. Thanks for doing that, Candace. It's candace@freepress.net, and folks can get in contact with her there. So thanks again to everyone. This has been a great webinar. I encourage you to keep an eye out for other upcoming webinars, prometheusradio.org /webinars. And definitely there'll be a follow-up email just after this in a couple days once the webinar is posted, the recording of it, and then folks can take a look at that and take a look at the other webinars that we have up in our archive. So thanks again to everyone. Have a great afternoon, and look forward to all of your applications. Thanks.